I want to tell you about the moment I stopped being a husband. Not the moment I found out. Not the moment I left. The moment I stopped. Really stopped. Feeling like her husband. It happened in a restaurant parking lot on a Tuesday evening, 3 days before our 11th anniversary. I had gotten off work 2 hours early. I had flowers in the back seat, tulips, yellow ones, her favorite, or at least they used to be. I remember thinking the whole drive over that maybe this was what we needed. A surprise, something small and unexpected to cut through all the distance that had quietly built up between us over the past year. I parked the car. I saw her through the window before I even opened the door. She was laughing. Not the polite laugh she gave at dinner parties. The real one. Head tilted back, hand on the table, completely unguarded. And sitting across from her, leaning in like he owned the space between them, was Arthur. My best friend Arthur. I stood there in the parking lot for, I don't know how long. The flowers were still in my hand. At some point, I set them on the hood of the car without thinking. I watched the two of them inside, and I felt something very quiet happen in my chest. Not rage, not tears. Something colder, something that felt like a door closing. I drove home. I put the flowers in a vase. I made dinner. And when Victoria came home an hour later, smelling like his cologne, I kissed her on the cheek and asked how her day was. She said, "Quiet, nothing special." And that was the moment. That was when I stopped being her husband and started being something else entirely. I need you to understand something before I go any further. I am not a dramatic person. I never have been. I'm an architect. I spend my days solving problems with straight lines and clean angles. I believe that if you look at something long enough and carefully enough, you will understand exactly what it is and exactly what it needs. That's how I approach my work. That's how I approach most things in life. I did not cry that night. I did not throw things. I did not call Arthur and scream at him. I sat at my drafting table until 2 a.m. and I thought, clearly, methodically, the way I would think through a load-bearing wall problem or a foundation issue. I asked myself, what do I actually know? What do I not know yet? And what do I need to find out? What I knew, my wife was meeting my best friend in restaurants and lying to my face about it. What I didn't know yet, how long, how serious, and what exactly they were planning. I found out the next morning. Victoria was in the shower. Her phone was on the nightstand. I want to be clear. I had never gone through her phone before. Not once in 11 years. I had never had a reason to, and honestly, I had never wanted to. There is a kind of trust you build with someone over a decade that feels structural, like something weight-bearing. You don't question it. You don't probe it. You just live on top of it. I picked up her phone. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a few messages. Maybe something I could explain away, or at least understand. What I found instead was 2 years of a parallel life. 2 years of miss you already and can't wait to see you Thursday. And he's going to sign the house papers next month. Then we can finally move. 2 years of plans made around my schedule, my business trips, my late nights at the office. 2 years of a relationship that had been built entirely in the gaps I left open by being exactly the kind of man I'd always been. Reliable, predictable, and apparently completely blind. There was one message that I keep coming back to even now. Arthur had written, "Does he suspect anything?" And Victoria had replied, "Marcus? No, he's too focused on his drawings. He has no idea. He has no idea." I put the phone back exactly where it was. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee. When Victoria came downstairs, 20 minutes later, I handed her a cup and asked if she wanted eggs. She said yes. I made the eggs. Here's the thing about that message. It didn't break me. I think if I had found it 6 months earlier, it might have. But standing there at that stove, cracking eggs into a pan, something in me had already shifted the night before in that parking lot. The message didn't create the wound. It just showed me the exact shape of it. She was going to wait until I signed the papers on the new house. That was the plan. We had been looking at a property for almost a year, a mid-century place with good bones out in the hills, something I had wanted to restore myself. It was going to be expensive. Victoria had been enthusiastic about it in a way that, looking back, I should have paid more attention to. She had opinions about the kitchen, the master suite, the guest rooms. She had been pushing me to finalize the purchase for months. Now I understood why. In California, property acquired during a marriage is marital property. If I signed those papers, she could walk away with half, more, potentially, given the work I planned to put into it. Arthur was not rich, not by the standards of the world Victoria wanted to live in. He was flashy and fun, and he had a good watch and a lease on a BMW. But he didn't have the kind of money that bought hillside houses in restoration condition. I did. Or rather, I had been building toward it for 11 years. That was the plan. Sign the house, file for divorce, take half. Arthur gets the girl gets the house, and Marcus gets to sit in an empty apartment, wondering where everything went. Not exactly. I called my attorney that afternoon from my car in the office parking garage. I had worked with Daniel for years. He handled all my firm's contracts and had done our wills and the deed on our current house. I told him I needed to see him that day. Privately. I told him it was a family matter. He fit me in at 4 o'clock. I sat across from Daniel in his office and I laid it out. All of it. He listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "How long do you want to take this?" I told him I needed 3 weeks, maybe 4. He said, "Let's get to work." I want to talk about those weeks because people always ask, how did you hold it together? How did you sit across from her every evening and not say anything? How did you kiss her goodbye in the morning knowing what you knew? The honest answer is, I don't fully know. Part of it was the work. Having a plan to execute gave me something to focus on. Every meeting with Daniel, every document transferred, every account adjusted. It was like laying a foundation, one piece at a time, quiet, methodical, invisible from the surface. But the other part of it was something harder to explain. I think I had already grieved. Not the big theatrical grief that came later, in waves at odd moments, but the core of it. The marriage I thought I had didn't exist. I had figured that out in a parking lot on a Tuesday evening. Everything after that was just logistics. I did not sign the papers on the house. I told Victoria there were issues with the title search that needed to be resolved first. She pushed. I told her the attorney was handling it. She let it go, but I could see the impatience behind her eyes. She was waiting. I was counting on that. I transferred the house we currently lived in, purchased in my name before the marriage, into a trust. Daniel had set it up properly, and it was clean and legal and quiet. I reorganized my business holdings, I updated my will, I moved the bulk of my liquid assets. None of this was hiding money, which would have been illegal. All of it was structuring, which is different, and which Daniel was very good at. At the end of the second week, I met Claire. That wasn't planned. I want to be clear about that. She had just joined the firm, a referral from a colleague in Portland, young architect with a good eye, and a portfolio that was honestly better than mine had been at her age. She came to a project meeting, and afterward she stayed to ask questions about a structural problem on one of the renders. We talked for 40 minutes, about work, about nothing else. But I remember driving home that evening thinking, when was the last time I had a real conversation? I didn't pursue anything. I wasn't in a place for that, and I knew it. But I noticed her. And I think somewhere in the noticing, there was a small reminder that the life I was building toward was not just an escape from something. It was a move towards something. I needed that reminder. The anniversary dinner was on a Saturday. Victoria had planned it herself, which was unusual. Normally, these things fell to me by default. I made the reservation. I handled the details. This year, she had insisted. She picked the restaurant. She made the reservation. She told me what time to meet her there. I thought that was sweet of me then. Now I understood it differently. She needed the evening to go perfectly. She needed me relaxed and happy and feeling close to her. Because the next week she was going to push again about the house papers. And then the week after that, probably, she was going to pull the trigger. I got dressed that Saturday. I put on the suit she liked. I drove to the restaurant. I arrived exactly on time. She was already there, at a corner table, wearing a blue dress I hadn't seen before. She looked beautiful. That's a strange thing to say, but it's true, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. She looked beautiful, and she looked happy, and for just a second, standing in the doorway of that restaurant, I felt the whole weight of 11 years press down on me at once. I sat down. We ordered wine. She talked about the restaurant, about the menu, about some renovation she'd seen in a magazine. I listened. I asked questions. I smiled at the right moments. The whole time there was this glass wall between me and the evening. I could see everything clearly, hear everything clearly, but none of it was quite reaching me. At some point she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. She said, 11 years, can you believe it? I said, no, I really can't. And I meant it, just not in the way she thought. After dinner, she wanted to walk. We walked along the waterfront the way we used to when we first moved to the city, before the firm grew, before the long hours, before everything. She held my arm. I let her. The city was quiet, and the water was black, and I kept thinking about the first time we had walked along this same stretch of water 11 years and a few weeks ago, and she had put her head on my shoulder, and I had thought, this is it. This is the person I'm going to build everything with. I had built a lot, just not what I thought I was building. That night, I did not sleep. I lay there, and I listened to her breathe, and I thought about the next week and what it was going to look like. Daniel and I had gone over the sequence. Everything was ready. All I had to do was wait. She brought up the house papers on Monday morning. She was casual about it, the way you're casual about something you've been rehearsing. She said the attorney had probably sorted out the title issue by now, hadn't he? She said she was excited to start planning the renovation. She said she thought we could be in by summer. I said I'd call Daniel. I called Daniel. He told Victoria when she called him directly 2 days later, which I had anticipated, that there were additional complications with the title and that he did not recommend proceeding with the purchase at this time. He was polite and professional and gave nothing away. She was frustrated. I could see it, but she held it together. She was still in the patient phase, still waiting. 3 days later, she filed. I found out from Daniel, who received the paperwork from her attorney that Thursday morning. He called me at 8:15 and said simply, "It's started." I was already at the office. I had been there since 7. I had a project review at 9 and a site visit at noon and a meeting with Claire and 2 other associates about a residential commission we'd just landed. I had things to do. I looked at Daniel's message and I thought about Victoria sitting with her attorney the night before, going over the numbers, calculating what she was owed, planning the conversation she was going to have with Arthur afterward. I sent Daniel one word: proceed. What Victoria's attorney found, or rather, what he didn't find, was the marriage I think she believed she had been in. The house we lived in was in a trust. My business holdings were structured in a way that was entirely legal and entirely opaque without significant forensic accounting. There was nothing hidden. There was nothing fraudulent. There was just very little left in the place she had expected to reach into. She called me that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. "Marcus, we need to talk. I don't know what you've done or what you think you know, but this is insane. Call me back, please." I didn't call back. She came to the house that evening. I wasn't there. I had moved what I needed the previous weekend: clothes, my drafting equipment, the books I cared about, to a furnished apartment Daniel had helped me find. Clean, modern, very quiet. It had good north light for drawing. I liked it immediately. She called 7 more times that night. I know because I watched the notifications come in from across the room, sitting at a temporary drafting table with a glass of water and a set of plans spread out in front of me. The text started around 10. "Marcus, where are you? Marcus, I know you got my messages. I don't understand what's happening. Please just talk to me. I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. Please." I put the phone face down and went back to the plans. In the weeks that followed, I heard from people we had known together. Mutual friends, some of Victoria's family, a few people from the neighborhood. Most of them didn't know the full story and were confused by the sudden separation. A few of them had figured out more than I expected. One of Victoria's closest friends called me, a woman named Diane, and she didn't say anything about Victoria at all. She just said, "I hope you're okay, Marcus." That meant more to me than I expected. Arthur had gone quiet. After Victoria filed, after it became clear that the financial situation was not what either of them had planned for, he apparently pulled back. I heard through a colleague that he had started dating someone new about 6 weeks later. I don't know if Victoria knew about that before or after it became obvious to everyone else. I didn't ask. The project with Claire moved forward. We were working late one Thursday, just the two of us. Most of the office had cleared out, and she looked up from her screen and said, "Can I ask you something personal?" I told her she could. She said, "Are you doing okay? You seem like someone who's been carrying something heavy for a while." I thought about that for a moment. I said, "I was. I think I'm getting close to putting it down." She nodded, like that made sense to her. Then she went back to work. We stayed another 2 hours. We got a lot done. I want to tell you about the last time I heard from Victoria directly. It was about 2 months after I had moved out. She had been sending messages that I wasn't responding to, and I had heard through Diane that she was not doing well. I felt something about that. I want to be honest about that. I am not a person who enjoys watching someone suffer, even after everything. Maybe especially after everything, because the person suffering was someone I had loved for 11 years. And love doesn't just switch off cleanly, even when the reason for it is gone. She left a voicemail that was different from the others. She wasn't angry in it. She wasn't making demands or trying to negotiate. She was just tired. She said she had made the worst mistake of her life. She said she didn't expect forgiveness. She said she just wanted me to know that she understood now what she had lost. She cried at the end. Real tears, the kind you can't manufacture. She said, "I'm sorry, Marcus. I know it's too late. I just needed you to know." I sat with that voicemail for a long time. Then I put the phone down and I walked out to the small balcony off the main room of my apartment, and I stood there for a while looking at the city. It was early evening. The light was that particular gold you get in this city around 6 o'clock when the sun is going down behind the hills. Everything looked warm and clear and very still. I thought about the parking lot, the yellow tulips on the hood of the car, the eggs I had made the next morning. 11 years, the weight of it. I also thought about that Thursday evening in the office, 2 weeks earlier, when Claire and I had worked late on the residential commission. At some point around midnight, we had both been hungry, and she had gone out and come back with 2 containers of Thai food, and we had eaten on the floor of the conference room, surrounded by blueprints. She had laughed at something I said. The real laugh, head back, completely unguarded. And I had thought, there it is, that thing. That's what it's supposed to feel like. I didn't call Victoria back. I don't say that with satisfaction. I'm not built for satisfaction. I say it as a fact, the way you'd state any other structural element, load-bearing or not. What we had built together was not what I thought it was. The foundation was wrong from the start, or at least from 2 years in, which amounts to the same thing when you're talking about something you trusted to hold. I've been asked what I would have done differently. I think about that sometimes. The honest answer is, I don't know. I could have pushed harder, earlier, on the distance between us. I could have had the difficult conversations instead of going back to the office. Maybe. But I also think some things don't fail because of neglect. Some things fail because one person chose, quietly and deliberately, to let them fail. And that's a choice I didn't make. A few months later, I asked Claire if she wanted to grab dinner after the Thursday review session. Nothing elaborate, just dinner. She said yes. We went to a small Italian place near the office that she knew. We talked about the project for maybe 20 minutes, and then we talked about everything else for 3 hours. She had grown up in Vermont. She had a dog named Henry. She had very specific opinions about windows, the angle of light, the relationship between interior and exterior, the way a well-placed window could change everything about how a room felt. I found this unreasonably interesting. I walked her to her car afterward. She stood with her keys in her hand and looked at me for a moment and said, "This was really nice, Marcus." I said, "Yeah, it was." She drove away. I stood on the sidewalk for a second. The city was doing that evening thing it does, all light and movement and possibility. I thought about foundations, about load-bearing walls, about the difference between what holds and what only looks like it holds. Then I went home. I had work to do in the morning. I had plans to draw. I had a life that was, slowly and surely, becoming exactly what I wanted it to be. And somewhere across the city, probably, Victoria's phone was showing my name with a call that would never connect. That's fine. Some doors are supposed to stay closed.